we are standing by for brand new numbers on inflation, which has not dropped since President Trump took office. This follows new data which found the unemployment rate is at its highest level in 4 years. Those are two reasons why the White House might have put President Trump on TV last night for an 18-minute speech to tout an economy that many Americans have questions about.
Our country is back, stronger than ever before. We're poised for an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen. Soon we will host the World Cup and the Olympics, both of which I got. When the world looks at us next year, let them see a nation that is loyal to its citizens, faithful to its workers, confident to its identity, certain to its destiny, and the envy of the entire globe. We are respected again like we have never been respected before.
It was a starkly different performance than his normal stump speeches. The Washington Post quoted a supporter saying, "Trump is speaking so fast he seems panicked. I've never seen him like this, and I've attended 42 of his rallies." These are the numbers he's up against. A new Quinnipiac University poll finds 57% say President Trump is more responsible for the current economy than former President Biden. Let's get right to CNN's Elena Treen live at the White House this morning for the very latest on what they're saying there. Elena?
Yeah, look, I actually think you pointed out the style of this. That was one of the most striking things to me, John, about the president's speech last night. He very much stayed on script. He was reading the teleprompter. That is not a characteristic for this president. And I mean, that's partly because I think he had 15, 16. This ended up being an 18-minute speech. He only had that amount of time for the television stations to actually take this. But he was rapidly rushing through this, shouting at times, almost trying to convince Americans this is what you need to be feeling right now. But one of the things, of course, when you get to substance, he did use this. This was a speech meant to tick through his accomplishments. He talked about the congressional, as the so-called big, beautiful bill that they passed over the summer, his tax cuts, tariffs that he said, all of this going to help attribute to the economy. And that was really the main focus of this speech. It was very clear what this speech was intended to do, which is to try and get in an issue that has been plaguing this administration and causing a lot of anxieties as they head into 2026, of course, a midterm elections year. He talked about affordability at length, and he really tried to place the blame at the feet of his predecessor, Joe Biden. He blamed him repeatedly, even actually starting to do so in his first sentence. Listen.
11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it. This is what the Biden administration allowed to happen to our country. Under the Biden administration, car prices rose 22%, and in many states, 30% or more. Under Biden, real wages plummeted by $3,000. Electricity costs surged 30 to 100% under Biden. The worst thing that the Biden administration did to our country is the invasion at the border.
And that was only a few examples of him using Biden's name, John. Look, I mean, the president also made selective use of some of these statistics. In some cases, they were quite misleading statistics. At one point, he tried to argue that inflation is down. It's actually, as of the last numbers we saw, as you mentioned, we're going to see some new numbers today, but it's at the same place we saw it on Inauguration Day when Joe Biden left office. He also tried to argue that employment is headed in the right direction. Well, when he entered office, the president, the unemployment rate was at 4%. The most recent numbers we saw put an unemployment rate at 4.6%. But look, I'll say this, and you could hear it in that clip. He keeps blaming Biden. I have now traveled the country talking to his supporters, the president's supporters, about this. I was in Pennsylvania last week when he delivered that speech that was supposed to be focused on affordability, but kind of weaved all over the place. They tell me that they agree with him, that, yeah, maybe he did inherit a bad economy, but they are losing patience. And at this point in time, they also say, we're starting to see this being an economy that Trump owns. It's no longer going to be a Biden economy. And so it's very clear that they need to get these numbers in a better place as they head into the next year.
Yeah, and needless to say, Daniel Dale, been working overtime overnight. We'll speak to him a little bit about the facts of this speech. Elena Treen at the White House this morning. Thank you very much. Kate?
Joining us right now for more on this is Madison Mills, senior markets reporter for Axios. Thanks for being here, Madison. Give me your perspective. What did we learn from the president in the speech?
Well, the president touted this kind of victory lap on the economy, which is very out of line with the data and what my sources on Wall Street and economic experts who I speak with every single day tell me is actually happening. We have this huge disconnect between the message the president is talking about, which is, he talked about prices going down, grocery costs plummeting, electricity costs going down. Just fact-checking electricity, that's up 13% over the last year, and he said those costs are already coming down, and I could really fact check every single comment that was made about the economy. So that just points to the disconnect here. I do know that the White House understands it has an affordability crisis on its hands. There's just a disconnect right now between how the president is addressing that affordability crisis and how people are actually feeling at home.
And so what is that going to look like going into the new year, right? Like here's how we're ending up this year as we put. There was a lot not said and not announced in this. What then is this going to look like, is the White House hoping and expecting is going to happen with the economy come Jan 1?
Well, Trump talked about this affordability that's coming, that
right.
All these costs are going to be coming down. He touted something in there about housing and how there's going to be some huge push for affordable housing. I would be very curious to hear any specifics on that. Also talking about these dividend checks, utilizing some of the tariff revenue to pay out veterans. And then also he's obviously talked about these $2,000 tariff stimulus checks.
But did not announce that either.
Didn't announce it. And also you would need a lot of congressional approval for that, which again, my sources tell me is not going to happen. They can't even agree on a budget, much less tariff dividend checks. So unclear whether or not to kind of price that in from a market's perspective if we don't have that clarity at this time.
So there is a lot of question marks going into what does this look like as we head into the new year in terms of the White House approach. But let's talk about just today. We had the new jobs, delayed jobs data that came out this week, 64,000 jobs added, but as Elena Trina was talking about, unemployment rose to a 4-year high. Yeah. And now we're getting another delayed because of the government shutdown bit of data, important data on consumer pricing coming today. What are you hearing about this?
Yeah, this will give us the inflation data, but at this point it's so backward looking. When we take a look at the options pricing in the market, it looks like investors are not pricing in major moves coming off of this report. So it's not necessarily going to move markets very much. It is obviously very important to get the data as soon as you possibly can to get insights into where we're at with inflation. I mean, the president was talking about inflation coming down, but we haven't gotten the data. So it's difficult to know where we're at.
Daniel Dale was up late working through much of it. He's now joins us. He is here now to walk through it. Let's start with the president's take on inflation and the economy. What did you see, Daniel?
I saw a whole bunch of false claims. I believe we have a soundbite of 4 of the claims he made on the subject. So listen to this.
When I took office, inflation was the worst in 48 years, and some would say in the history of our country. The price of eggs is down 82% since March, and everything else is falling rapidly. I negotiated directly with the drug companies and foreign nations, which were taking advantage of our country for many decades, to slash prices on drugs and pharmaceuticals by as much as 400, 500, and even 600%. Our border is secure. Inflation has stopped. Wages are up. Prices are down.
A whole bunch of claims there. None of that is true. So inflation is not stopped. The latest inflation rate we have for September was 3.0%. That was the 5th consecutive month that the year-over-year inflation rate had increased. Now, it is possible that later this morning we will get a lower rate for November, but that won't mean that prices have ceased rising, simply that they're rising less rapidly. It's also not true that President Trump inherited the worst inflation of all time. He inherited a 3.0% inflation rate in January. That is, again, the exact same rate we have for September 2025. Now, it is true that under President Biden in June 2022, the inflation rate did hit a 40-year high, not an all-time high, not a 48-year high, but that was more than 2 years before President Trump returned to office, and it then plummeted. Now, President Trump also claimed that price of eggs are falling. That is true. But then he said everything else is falling rapidly. That is not even close to true, even if he's talking specifically about grocery prices. Far more grocery items have increased in price this term than have decreased. We have increases like about 15% in the price of coffee since January, about 14% in the price of ground beef, about 8% in the price of bananas. I could go on, literally dozens of items, not true. And then he spoke of reducing prescription drug prices by 400 to 600%. Those numbers aren't even mathematically possible. If you have a decrease of more than 100%, that means that Americans would be getting paid to acquire their medications. Obviously, that is not happening.
Let's change topics, though, because the president also hit on once again the wars that he says he has ended. We have heard this in almost every speech that he has given, really, since he's taken office. Yeah. Last night, he's saying that he ended 8 wars. What's he referring to?
He is referring to a bunch of, well, it's not 8 wars. So let me tell you what his list includes. It includes a conflict between Egypt and Ethiopia. The thing is, that was not a war under President Trump. It is a long-running, ongoing diplomatic dispute over an Ethiopian dam project on a tributary of the Nile River. So there was no war for President Trump to end. It also includes conflicts that are ongoing between Thailand and Cambodia, in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, and it includes another non-war between Serbia and Kosovo. President Trump has claimed that he prevented the eruption of a new war, providing almost no details about what he's talking about, but there was no war in that region for him to end either.